Today, we're going to answer your mailbag questions, including trying to get inside the head of one Lou Lamoriello. Let's hope we survive that experience. We've got all that and a lot more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Friday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We have got a lot to get to on today's show, but first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, and we have some mailbag questions to answer today, you can email us your questions or comments, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode. Send the email to lockedonislanders@gmail.com, and if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we talk about whatever's on your mind. You can also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles. You can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long during the offseason. That's hirings, firings, trade rumors, free agency, the draft. We'll have it all covered for you right here on Locked On Islanders. And it's always great to talk Islanders hockey with you, whether it's game time or any time. So let's open up with the mailbag, and we have a bunch of questions. This one is from Sean, friend of the show. He writes, Gil, hope you're well. Would love to join Locked On Islanders group next year for a game. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it happen this year. Being a novice hockey fan, but a hockey novice rather, but an everydayer to the show, I was curious if you could elaborate on Lou's reasoning behind the troubling contracts that are obviously now hindering the team. I'm not suggesting you psychoanalyze Lou, but still being new to the sport, it's just that the contract style that was successful for him managing other teams might somehow now be considered antiquarian. Are there currently other presidents or GMs in the league that are finding success utilizing a Lou-style approach to their contracts while the Islanders just stumbled on a span of bad luck with player performance? Or is this a situation of ego and smartest guy in the room scenario? Sean, first of all, then he says, thanks, Gil, younger, faster, and more skilled. I love it. Thank you, Sean. Thanks for the email. Glad you enjoy the show. The situation with Lou Lamoriello, in my mind, is this. Lou is a very smart guy. He's in the Hockey Hall of Fame already for what he accomplished predominantly in New Jersey in the 90s and early 2000s. And all of that kind of took place before the NHL instituted a salary cap. Since the league put a salary cap into place, it seems like Lou has struggled a little bit more and hasn't been as successful or won a Stanley Cup since the implementation of the salary cap. Lou, at this stage, at least, I'm not going to address New Jersey, but I certainly will address his tenure in Toronto and his tenure on Long Island, especially, obviously, the island. He tends to want to win now. He wants to be competitive every year, which means he wants to avoid a rebuild or a retool. And, part of what he said within the last year is, I want my team to make the playoffs, and once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen. The way Lou built the Islanders right now kind of plays to some of his weaknesses. He has traded away the last 4 first-round draft picks. And, generally you could trade away multiple first-round picks in a row, but you usually do that when your team is already an elite contender, one of the top, let's say, 6 or 7 teams in the league, and you feel like if we trade away our number 1 pick and we bring in this player, or these two players, that puts us over the top and we're a good team to win the Stanley Cup. I think there are some specific individual circumstances that also hindered Lou Lamoriello. He's given out too many no-trade clauses. I think part of that is to entice players to sign with the Islanders and maybe take a little less money. So in exchange, he gives them longer contracts, which gives them a little more security, and no-trade clauses, which, let's face it, gives security to their family in addition to them. If you can veto a trade, and you and your family, you have kids, you want them moving schools from, Long Island to, let's say, Denver or, Montreal or Calgary at the drop of a hat, you want that security. I think, he signed, I forget whether it was Anders Lee or Brock Nelson. I think it was Lee to a long-term contract right after John Tavares surprised everybody and signed in Toronto. I think the length and terms of Lee's contract was because he didn't want to lose both of those guys during the same offseason, and I think that's come back to bite him. But I think just right now, his overall approach, while it worked really well prior to the age of the salary cap, it really hasn't worked as well since then. And that's just really just, I think, I'm not going to say the game has passed him by, but I just think his approach just has not worked as well in recent years. Going to our next mailbag question. This one is, yes, Billy Smith, not that Billy Smith. Hi, Gil. I am an everydayer who has not written before, and my name is Billy Smith. Feel free to mention my last name. I am proud of it, and I have met the great one, the Islander goalie, former Islander goalie, Billy Smith. I listened to your show the other day, and I agree we need two scoring forwards. I know you want to get younger and faster and more skilled. I agree. But what about finding one player who is younger and faster and one incredible veteran? I'm thinking about Patrick Kane. You could get him for less than $3 million, and he had 20 goals last year. He has won Stanley Cups and would be amazing in the locker room. If management wants to tell fans that we are going for the cup, Kane would send that message. Can't sign him for 7 years, obviously. Just a thought. I enjoy the show. Well, Billy, first of all, thank you. And great to hear from Billy Smith under any circumstances, really. Let's talk about Patrick Kane, okay, and where he might fit on the Islanders. He's 35. He'll be 36 in November. He's still pretty close to a point-a-game player. 47 points in 50 games this year. 20 goals, 27 assists. And, that's playing on a Detroit Red Wings team that missed the playoffs, but, still was in the hunt until pretty late, but not an elite team. If I felt that the Islanders were a couple of players away from being true contenders, I'd agree with you, Billy. Go get me Patrick Kane. If you could get, Nikolai Ehlers and Patrick Kane, and you can get Kane on a 1-year deal for $2.5, $3 million, I would certainly, sign off on that. The only problem is I don't think the Islanders are one or two players away from being a real legitimate elite Stanley Cup contender. Now, if you were to do what I just described, get a Nikolai Ehlers and then a Patrick Kane, again, and as you said, Billy, don't sign him to a 7-year deal. I wouldn't go more than a 2-year deal, 1 year, plus maybe a team option for a second, I think, or a very incentive-laden deal where the second year kicks in if he meets certain standards. That might work. And I agree with you about this. Kane is a 3-time Stanley Cup winner. He is a leader. He's a 4-time All-Star. He's won the Conn Smythe, the Hart, the Pearson, the Art Ross, the Calder Trophy. He is a guy who would be great to add to this locker room in so many different ways. My only hesitation is his age and the fact that I think the Islanders are more than those two players away from really being contenders. Could the Islanders, take it to the next level? Could they be instead of, could they possibly fight for 100 points in a year if you were to add Ehlers and Kane? Yeah, it depends who you get rid of. It depends, in order to free up the cap space to sign those two guys. But overall, Billy, I think your idea of, bringing in one guy who may be a little bit younger and higher priced and one guy who may be older but can be had for a relative bargain who'll give you that leadership, I don't think that's a terrible idea if you're not sacrificing the future by doing it. And again, it matters about the contracts and who you have to trade away and what the cap hit is. But overall, I understand it if you really want to make a go for it this year, which, unless you get younger, faster, and more skilled, is going to probably be a final opportunity for this group to try to really be better. And I don't know how much better they could be without some of these changes. We've got more to get to on today's show. We have another mailbag question. Plus, the Islanders hire a new supervisor of goaltending, and it's a familiar name. And we'll continue our player-by-player look at the season with Ryan Pulock. And oh, by the way, our Islanders' birthday of the day, a goalie who was only with the Islanders for one season, but really shined anytime the Islanders played the Rangers, and that was one of his former teams. And yes, he played for the Devils, the Rangers, and the Islanders in that order. Played for the Islanders in the mid to late 2000s. Let's see if you can guess who that is. We've got all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Game Time. Game Time is making getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their lowest price guarantee, so Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. My favorite feature on Game Time, you go on the app, and you can see a panoramic view from your seat before you purchase the tickets. That way you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And they've got flash deals where you could save even more on in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Well, make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So one more mailbag question, and this one comes from Matt in New Jersey. And Matt asks, Gil, I recently heard the Locked On Mets podcast, and they questioned if the 2024 Mets were built to sell. It makes me think if Lou could do the same thing. The 2024 added a bit of talent late in the offseason on trades and tradable one-year deals. J.D. Martinez and Luis Severino led the way. It makes me wonder if the Islanders could do the same thing, add a few players that could help out next season. But if things go badly, you flip them for picks or young talent. I'm not sure if Lou would do this since he never seems to want to give up on a season, but it could help in the long run. Matt, first of all, again, thank you for the question. I think you're spot on about a couple of things. Number one, Lou doesn't like to rebuild or retool, or as you said, give up on a season. So he's not going to be that eager to do that. I think there are already players on this roster who might fit that description if you look at the cap situation. Right now, you've got Brock Nelson entering the final year of his contract with a $6 million cap hit. Kyle Palmieri entering the final year of his contract with a $5 million cap hit. You have 2 years left of Anders Lee, so he is a little less, tradable in that sense. But realistically, guys like Nelson and Palmieri, if you get to the trade deadline and the Islanders are just not getting it done this year, certainly I think guys like Palmieri and Brock Nelson would have value. Anders Lee, if he revives himself a little bit, could have some value. The problem that you have with the Islanders as far as, having a break-upable team, you got so many no-trade clauses and modified no-trade clauses. And guys who you may want to trade away to free up cap space, there's no prospects ready to step in and really be difference makers. And you really, would have difficulty trading away like Anders Lee because he's not worth $7 million based on his production on ice anymore. J.G. Pageau, he has 2 years left on his contract. He is not producing at a $5 million a year kind of a deal. And both of those players have modified no-trade clauses, which they'd have to waive in order to make any kind of deal. So I think the idea is a solid one. I think in practice, I don't think Lou Lamoriello thinks that way. Should he is a completely different question. But as of right now, I would have to say the odds of the Islanders doing that are not strong, but that doesn't mean it's something they shouldn't consider. And I think part of the other problem is, again, the way these deals are structured is part of the problem, and it's getting the Islanders into a little bit of trouble in that regard. But we'll see whether or not this team can figure something out. Now, every day, as you know, yesterday we talked a little bit about goaltending situation, and the Islanders made a couple of moves as far as the goaltending coach is concerned. Mitch Korn, as everydayers will know, left to go to Nashville. Well, now the Islanders have appointed Chris Terreri, who has been the goalie coach at Bridgeport since 2018, to be the organization's new director of goaltending, taking Mitch Korn's place. So again, you have a former NHL goalie, in fact, briefly a former Islander, in there to sort of be the new Mitch Korn, and then to replace Terreri as Bridgeport's goalie coach, they bring in Sergei Naumovs, and Naumovs basically has worked in the KHL with Ilya Sorokin. He was with CSKA Moscow from 2018 to 2020 when Sorokin was there. Now, Piero Greco, who has been the team's actual goalie coach, is going to remain in that position. Now, as far as Naumovs is concerned, Sorokin was MVP in 2019, won the KHL's Gagarin Cup while he was being coached basically by Naumovs. So I think having that connection is really throwing a bone to Ilya Sorokin, hoping to get him back on track. And if you think about it, your two starting goaltenders right now, your starter and your backup, are both Russian. To have a Russian goalie coach, that's not a bad idea. He's been successful in the KHL. Let's see and hope that he's able to make that adjustment and also be successful in the NHL. And we will certainly be following that over the course of the rest of this offseason as far as, whether there are any other coaching changes and then how Namovs does now that he has joined the Islanders organization. We have got more to get to on today's show. We will talk a little bit about Ryan Pulock, what his season was like, whether he lived up to expectations, what he did well, what he did poorly, and what his role is likely to be with this team next year. We've got that plus our Islanders birthday of the day still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So we continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders. Today, we take a look at Ryan Pulock. And every day, as you know, yesterday we did Robert Bortuzzo. We've done Ilya Sorokin, Simon Holmstrom, Anders Lee, Scott Mayfield. We've been doing this now. This concludes our third week of going player-by-player, and we will continue until we've discussed everybody who has played at least a game for the Islanders. Ryan Pulock, 58 games played this year, 5 goals, 19 points, a +3, and again, only 12 penalty minutes. 2 of his 5 goals coming on the power play, and he gave you 22 minutes and 33 seconds of ice time per game. That is a new career high. He had 149 block shots, also a new career high, but his hits at 99, down from 140 a year ago. But of course, he played 24 more games a year ago, and that certainly does make a difference when you start analyzing, all of that. So again, for Ryan Pulock, this was not an ideal season. His shot remains very hard, but not always very accurate. And again, injuries. He missed time from December to February with a lower body injury. And, the Islanders clearly missed him when he wasn't there. Injured on December 7th. And the team struggled in his absence, no doubt about that. And look, I think one thing I would be working on if I was Ryan Pulock is making that shot more accurate. It's hard. It's a good shot, but when it misses, sometimes it, goes out of the zone, and it goes all the way, back out of the zone, especially on the power play. That can be a momentum killer. Pulock still, has 5 years left on his contract. He's got a no-trade clause, so he's probably not going anywhere. It becomes a modified no-trade clause in 2027, 2028, so we still have 3 years of a full no-trade clause. And again, he's going to hit the big 3-0. He's making $6.15 million, or at least that's his cap hit right now. And, again, Pulock and Pelech remain your shutdown defense pair when they are together. Keeping both of them healthy has been a challenge. The fact that Pulock is a right shot defenseman definitely helps him. And, he is a guy who you could pair with almost any left shot defenseman and know that if they want to be more offensive minded, a guy like Ryan Pulock would have their back. So I think, was this a great season for Ryan Pulock? No. Was it a terrible season? No. I think it was a fairly solid season, a good season, minus, except for the injury. And I think he's capable of more production offensively, but also I think what you want most from him is to be that shutdown defensive guy, and we need to reinforce that going forward in order for Ryan Pulock to really, do what he needs to do to help this hockey team the most. If he comes back, I expect him to be in the top 4 again. And again, he will be back, barring waiving his no trade clause. I want him to stay healthy. He'll be in the top 4. And, again, see major minutes on the power play, on the penalty kill, and hopefully just be healthy and a little bit more productive. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And Saturday is the 52nd birthday of former Islanders goalie Mike Dunham. Dunham, originally a third-round pick of the Devils back in 1990, spent 3 years at the University of Maine, made his NHL debut with the Devils in 96-97, moved on to Nashville, then the New York Rangers, then the Atlanta Thrashers, and finished his NHL career in 2006-2007, playing 19 games for the Islanders, had a .374 goals against average, a .410-3 record, and yet anytime the Islanders played the Rangers, he seemed to have one of his better games. We'll take a look at one of those non-Ranger wins that he had, November 18th, 2006. Islanders visiting the Florida Panthers. The goalies, obviously, Mike Dunham, the goalie for the Islanders. Eddie Belfour, the goalie for Florida in this one. And the Islanders being outshot 44-32, but still skating away with a 4-1 win, mostly because Mike Dunham made 43 saves in this game to get the Islanders to the big win. Game-winning goal to Aaron Asham, Jason Blake with a goal and an assist, as did Alexei Yashin. Islanders winning this one 4-1, but the outstanding goaltending of Mike Dunham, a big factor in this one. And Dunham did go on to be a coach, a goalie coach for the Islanders organization after his career was over. Was the Islanders goalie coach from 2008, 2009 to 2014, 2015, then went 2 seasons to Bridgeport, and then came back to the Islanders for 2015, 2016, and 2016, 2017. So Mike Dunham really did a good job as the goalie coach for the Islanders, was with the organization a lot more as a coach than he was as a player. Mike Dunham is our Islanders birthday of the day. Thanks again for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, Monday, we will be back. We will continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders roster with Hudson Fasching. Plus, we will also have all the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings. Have a great weekend. Can't believe we're in June already. Once we hit Saturday, and that means the draft is this month. Will Lou Lamoriello hold on to that first-round pick? Well, we're going to be talking a lot more about the draft over the next few weeks. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe. And, of course, let's go Islanders.